Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for listening to our content, and please like and subscribe. Well, welcome back to the Pure Athlete Podcast. I am Jeff Francoeur, along with my two amigos here, Britt Lee and Brad Williams. We're so excited to be back with you today. We have a special guest, a guy that I know all three of us can say we've listened to quite a few times. I know he's impacted my life a lot, but I've never met him until today. But our guest today played football at the University of Tennessee, has an amazing story, obviously had a great chance to go to the NFL, and had obviously an incident happen for him that changed his life and his direction. But I think he would tell you that God put him on a different path, and a path that has impacted so many. So I would like to bring on our guest, guys, and welcome Inky Johnson to the podcast today. Thank you, man.
Oh, no, man. It's an honor. I appreciate you guys, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you.
Oh, no, man. It's an honor. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to jump right on in and ask the first question, as I always do in our podcast. But before we even get to a lot of the stuff, I got to ask you, what was one of the best moments for you in youth sports?
One of the best moments for me in youth sports, man, I played for an organization called Tucker Lions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I played against the Tucker Lions.
Yeah.
I grew up in Tucker.
Yeah.
Central to Cab. Central to
Okay,
Cab right
yeah,
here.
man. Fitzgerald Field,
Yeah.
man. And, it was incredible. But one of my greatest moments, it didn't happen on the field. It happened off the field. And so I had a coach by the name of Trey Hurst. And my mom, when I was young, she used to work a double shift. And so I would be in the park really late waiting on my mother to get off work. And one night they wouldn't let her off her shift. And she worked at Wendy's. And she called him. And she said, they won't let me off. Can you take Ink home? He's like, sure, no problem. And he drove this truck. It was like a blue pickup truck. And he had the camper on the back, right? So all the boys used to always want to ride with him. And he came to me, told me the situation. Ink, I'm taking you home tonight. I was like, all right, cool. And so we get to my house, and I watched the way he treated people, right? And so I always wanted to ask him the question, like, man, why do you do what you do, right? The way you do it, right? And so we got on the sidewalk. I was like, Coach, I want to ask you a question, not trying to be disrespectful, but like, why do you do what you do? Why do you live life the way you live it? And I'll never forget, man, he got out of his truck and he was like, man, you can't disrespect me, ain't? He's like, you got any questions, shoot away. And he was like, son, I love you, right? And that was one of the first times, like, a male told me, son, I love you, right? With something that I was a part of, right? And it impacted me in a way to where it was unbelievable, right? The way I looked at him. Now, the way I did things for him in terms of the sport, school, classroom, the way I took his advice, and it changed my life. Like, I believe an individual's life changes multiple times, but in my early years, that was one of the most special moments with me playing ball when my coach told me, like, son, I love you, right? Like, that changed my life, you know, and so I would say that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I guess my home run in Little League Championship doesn't mean anything now.
It seems so shallow.
You know, that's awesome, though, because, I mean, so many coaches out there don't realize the impact that they can have on a kid. They're out there to win a game, but, man, the impact he had on you and to our coaches who are in our audience, I mean, what an impact they can have.
Absolutely, man. I think it's an incredible opportunity to be trusted by, you know, parents with a kid. I often think about that. Like, when I look at organizations or teams with my children, I think about not the moments that I'm there. I think about the moments that I'm not there, right? Like, if I'm not here, how will I feel when my kid is being left at practice or game with those individuals? Like, what would their confidence be like after a game? Will they correlate it to life? And so I think it's an amazing opportunity that coaches have to impact, for sure. Yeah.
Well, before we kind of get into things, tell us a little bit about now. I know you speak a lot, but your family and where you're at now.
Yeah, man. Here in Atlanta, my wife, you know, she's been with me since I was young. Right, we grew up together, man. Extremely blessed. Have 2 kids, you know, Ink and Jada, real name Aquarius, and they're 11 and 12 years old. My daughter's the oldest, and just trying to be better for them, man, every day. But I would say, they teach me a lot more than I think I teach them, And my wife was a teacher for a number of years. The only thing she wanted to do since she was young was teach kids, right? And so she came out of the classroom a few years ago, and just going about life, man, trying to make it happen like everybody else, man. Yeah, for sure.
Well, tell us a little bit about tell us your stories. Tell us when you played football here in high school, and then kind of the rest of the story, as they say.
Yeah, man, I fell in love with sports very early, and so I played everything. Like, I was one of those kids, man. I just love competition. I was that kid, you catch me in the street, I'll bottle flip you to death. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd be like, Jeff, let's bottle flip. Where you going to the house, right? I was that kid. Like, if you meet the kids I grew up with, they'll tell you, like, Ink was always somewhere playing something. His mom had to call him in the house sometimes. So I fell in love with ball, but especially, man, I love football. And I had aspirations to make it to the NFL. And at a very young age, because I wanted to change my family situation. I was growing up southeast corner of Atlanta, 2-bedroom home, 14 people, and sports was something for me. It exposed me to a lot, and I was extremely grateful for it. But I remember leaving our side of town and going through different neighborhoods to get to the park and being able to just see a different side of life. And then when I came back to my neighborhood, to be able to talk to my friends, talk to my cousins, and tell them, like, man, it's different out there, right? Because if you never leave, you never know. And so the exposure, I remember when my cousins started playing and all of us was playing ball, coach took us to a place and got us our first steak. He bought us a steak. We couldn't believe it, right? And we came back home. We were stoked, right? We came in the house like, bro, we ate a steak tonight. You know what I'm saying? Like, we couldn't believe it. And so I remember all of those moments, man. And I went to Krim High School. I was a product of the Atlanta public school system. And at Krim High School, it was a high school at the time to where people weren't really going to school, going to college. And I wanted to make it from there specifically because that was on my side of town. A lot of people felt it couldn't be done. And so I believed that it could. And so my freshman year there, I played ball. After that, people came to my mother. My father started coming back in the picture at that point, pretty heavy. And they told him, hey, man, if you transfer him, we think he can get a shot at Tucker. And I was like, that's cool. I know a lot of my guys out there. That's cool, man. But I think I can make it from Krim. And they were just concerned parents. Like, man, ain't people not going to college from Krim. And they were right. People weren't, right? And I was going against the grain, and I believed I could. And they transferred me to Tucker. And I was devastated. They transferred my sophomore year. I was devastated. I was hurt. But I had all of my friends there, right? And Tucker, you guys know Tucker at the time, great program, man. Resources. And so when I got there, I'm not proud of it, but I really didn't go to class, right? Like, I was sitting in front of the school. I was so upset, right, with my parents that they transferred me. And now looking back at it and being a parent, I can kind of understand the thought process. But at the time, being a teenager, I felt like they didn't believe, right? But they weren't looking at it that way. They were looking at it like, son, listen, we're trying to give you an opportunity to go to school. But I took it and processed it as, man, they don't believe in me. Like, I told them I can make it, right? They should believe I can make it. But they're looking at it like, hey, don't nobody go to college from there? Like, what you talking about, right? And so I remember a cop at Tucker came to me one day, and he was like, man, why don't you just go to class? He was like, bro, like, you can go to class a couple years, handle your business, you get a shot to go to college. And I was like, I hear you, man, but I don't want to be here. I said I could do it from across town, having to get up 5 in the morning, 5:30, drive all the way to Tucker, sit at Matthew's restaurant, which I'm grateful for.
Which was good.
Right?
It's the best darn food you'll ever have.
I was sitting
Ate
in
there last week.
There's a reason you're not 300 pounds if you're eating there.
I was sitting in there, and then when the school opens up, I walk down the street to the school, and I didn't really know anybody other than my guys I played ball with. And so my mother got tired of it, and she transferred me back, and I ended up getting blessed with a scholarship, man, to go to the University of Tennessee. Huge moment. First one in my family to go to college. And when I got there, man, I was playing ball at a high level. and I come into my junior year. Of course, I had been starting at corner, and I had an injury the second game of my junior season, and it ended my career, and it altered my life. You know, it paralyzed my right arm and hand, and it put me on the path that I'm on now in terms of speaking and serving. Yeah.
Talk about that play. I mean, you don't remember it though, do you?
No, I remember.
You do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so it's fourth quarter, a little bit over 2 minutes left. We had quarters coverage call, and Gerard Mayo at the time, he was our Mike Backer, and he's the linebackers coach for the Patriots. And so when we break the huddle, I was like, man, let's get these cats out of here. Like, let's go, man. Because we was playing Air Force, and they were tough.
Run the triple option.
Yeah, running that triple option you don't see every week in the SEC. Guys extremely disciplined. Like, they very rarely got outside of what they were supposed to do. So it was just a tough game. And, they start running their play. I'm just backpedaling to my quarter, and I see they run like a little wheel route. And one of our guys, his eyes got caught inside, so he didn't go with the guy. And the quarterback, as soon as the guy got in the open, quarterback released it, guy catches it. I just come up from my quarter to make routine tackle. And as soon as I hit him, like I'll never forget, man, it felt like everything in my body just left. And I never felt anything like that before. And I've been in a lot harder collisions. And my body just went completely limp. I hit the ground. As soon as I hit the ground, I remember blacking out. And then when I came to, everybody was over me like, Ink, get up, let's rock. And so I was like, I can't. And there was a shock going like through my whole body, crown of my head, bottom of my feet. And it was very brief. And then it left my body, but it stayed in my right arm and hand. And they brought the spine board out, and they got me off the field and got me to the ambulance. Yeah.
And what was the prognosis when they got you to the hospital?
So when they got me there, everything was calm, cool. It didn't seem intense at all, right? Everybody was kind of just going through protocol. They was talking to me, Ink, things happen. We're going to run the test, put you in a room. I remember they ran the test. They put me in a room. My mother came in. She kissed me on my forehead, cracked a couple of jokes. And then she left out the room. And when she left out the room, I'll never forget seeing a doctor. And he was running in my direction, and he was screaming. And he was saying, guys, get in here. We got to rush this kid back to emergency surgery. He's about to die. And I remember thinking, like, man, is he, like, serious? That's how calm the environment had been, right, to where I was talking to him. So I'm like, man, is he jiving me? And so I was like, die, like, away from me or die? He was like, yeah. I was like, what happened? It's like when we ran the test, we noticed you've ruptured your main artery, your subclavian artery, and you're bleeding internally. He said, we got to rush you back, take the main vein out of your left leg, plug it into your chest in order to save your life. He said, I guarantee you, you won't be here in the morning. You'll bleed out. And so that's the moment.
He's telling you that before you go into surgery.
Oh, yeah, he's telling me that. So that's the moment when I was like, oh, it's real. Like, it's real. And then the next morning I woke up, and, like, I never thought all of this would happen. Like, I went into surgery thinking artery because that's what they stated. And when they went in to do the surgery, that's when they noticed nerve damage in my brachial plexus, had torn the nerves from my spine that controls shoulder, arm, hand, fingers. And so when I woke up, I had 6 incisions down my left thigh, incision across the left side of my neck, right side, twice through my right ribs, cut out my right pec, bottom of my armpit to the bottom of my hand, 350 staples, and they had bandaged me from my neck to my knees. And so it was a totally different ball game when I woke up, like totally different.
So, Inky, we talk a lot about, even in the athletic sphere, dealing with adversity. But, I mean, most of us don't deal with that kind of adversity. So how did you pick yourself up from all of that? I read somewhere where they wanted to send you home, and you said, no, I don't want to go home. So tell us about the next few weeks.
Yeah, man, they presented me the option of going home because they said something traumatic has happened to you. And so we just want to send you back home, man, and be around family and friends. And so we're going to unenroll you. And I was just of the thought process, man, like, I'm not, like, it's nothing for me at home. Like, why would I go back home? And I understood their thought process, but it was like, it's nothing for me at home. And I'm thankful because my mother raised me in such a way, as well as my father, Like, I didn't start things and not finish them. Right now, if they made the decision to be like, nah, Ink, this environment is not healthy, this is toxic, that was their decision, right? And I respected that. But if I was doing something, they raised me, Ink, finish, right? And so I was a guy, I needed to get back around my teammates because that fueled me. Like, that was my community at the time. And so I needed to get out of the hospital to get back around them. It wasn't, people often think like, man, you got out of the hospital like in 3 days, you're supposed to be there 60 to 80 days. And I was like, but it wasn't on some macho man like, I'm getting out of the hospital. No, like I needed to get back in this environment because this environment, it fed me, right? It did something for me just as a man, my development. And so I got out of the hospital pretty quick and I was back at workouts, not because I could play a game. Like, that's what I used to tell the guys. I couldn't play. My career was over at that point. I needed to be back in that environment and continue to finish what I started, like my quest to become a better man, right? That's why I'm so thankful for the people that were placed in my life because they always drove home that message of, all right, Ink, this is the platform. And so we're going to try to cultivate this through the platform. Platform is football, Ink. Cultivating this through the platform. Platform is baseball, Ink. We're cultivating this through the platform. And so when I got to college, I was well aware that, all right, man, football is the platform. Let's cultivate excellence, dedication, commitment. And it was tested. This tested me. And it hurt. Like, it hurt, man. I cried like a baby. It hurt.
I was going to say, you're very obviously positive, strong guy, but there had to be those moments where you were just like, why?
Oh, no
I'm
question.
sure, right?
No question. No question.
Did it take you a while to kind of comprehend, though, like, I'm never playing football again?
Yeah, it took me over 2 years.
Did it?
Yeah, over 2 years, man. Because even if medically they tell you, all right, you're done.
You got that belief.
Yeah, the belief as an athlete, the bravado, the mindset of an athlete, in my whole life, I felt like I had beat the odds, right? Born to a mother at 16, 2-bedroom home, 14 people. First one in my family to go to college. Come from a high school where people don't really go to college. Man, you go to college. Like, my whole life, I felt like, man, I'm beating the odds. And so this is just another obstacle, opposition and adversity. Let's face it. Let's get through it. And this was the first time I was going through something to where I had the belief, but I also had the, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, even as a kid, when I was coming up, 2-bedroom house, 14 people, I never had the, I don't know, man, if I can make it. I had to, man, I got to do it, telling my cousins. And so I'll never forget, I was in the indoor on the turf one day, and I just broke down. It was a little bit after that 2-year point. I've been going to doctor's visits, and I wasn't seeing anything. Like, I would literally go into a room, Rochester, Minnesota. They would stick needles in my back, shoot dye in my body, and we would get up. They would run a test. Say, are you seeing anything? Nah, I'm not seeing anything. And I did this for almost 2 years, just going doctor to doctor, nothing. And I got in there, man, and I just broke down. And I was like, man, it's really over. But it took me 2 years to get to that point to where I didn't have that false sense of belief that, nah, man, I'm going to be back. Because I thought, oh, man, I got like 1.5 years, 2 years. I'm going to get strong. I'm going to come back. And those 2 years put a level of reality into me to when it was like, nah, you done. And it was hard, man. It was hard accepting that.
Who was the one person you would say as you go through these 2 years and then you're coming out the other side that, you were kind of in a way saying, what do I want to do with my life now? I know the NFL is not part of it. Who was that probably impactful person for you?
Man, I would say obviously my mom and my dad, like, because they came together in a way that I had never seen, right? Because my whole life, my mother didn't too much care for my father because of how they started. And so when my injury happened, that was the first time I had been under the roof of a house with my father for consecutive days. Like, that never happened. And that was the first time I saw my father say, I'm dropping everything and I'm going to come stay and check on my son, right? In Knoxville, Tennessee. I never saw that before. And so me and my father were spending time together, like in ways that we had never spent time together, right? Because I didn't grow up in the house with my father. And so being on the road, going to doctor's visits, even just sitting, talking with my father, watching him and my mother interact, talking with both of them, I never had that, right? Most kids get that when they grow up. You can go to the dinner table, got moms, got pops. I was just experiencing that at 20, right? After my injury happened. But also we had a chaplain, guy by the name of James Mitchell, that worked for the Titans. He was there every visit, working on my father, working on me. He had put me in discipleship when I first got to Tennessee. And I'm thankful for it because I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like spiritual discipleship.
I'm good.
I ain't trying. That sounds hard, man. And he walked with me, man, and me and my roommates. And so when the injury happened, it was almost like I was getting, you know how you get in-game training or teaching? It was like I was getting in-life teaching from the things that he had instilled and been showing me the prior 2 years. It's like, all right, now it's real. All the stuff we studied through Discipleship Inc., now it's real, right? You're in your 3rd year. You lost your career. You got a paralyzed right arm. Like, now it's real. Now you got to live it, right? And he was there every visit. I had 2 surgeries. Most people know about the one. I had a second major surgery in Rochester, Minnesota, a couple of days before Christmas. And he had 2 daughters. He had a wife, the chaplain that I'm speaking of, and he was there, right? And I had that surgery, man. He was right there. And I was like, Mitch, man, you don't have to be here. He was like, nah, Ink, I got to be here. Like, I'm going to be here for you and your family. And I think that changed my father. My father was like, he was just hardened, right? His spirit was hardened. And Mitch being there and working on my father and working on me, he got me to just thinking different. I wasn't thinking that I was going to be speaking. He just got me thinking about the opposition, the adversity, my father's relationship, my mother's relationship. He just got me being aware of, hey, man, look at what this is doing to your father. Because if he wasn't there, I never would have saw it. Hey, man, look at what this is doing with your father and your mother, right? And so right then, it got my attention that, hey, man, you got an incredible opportunity, man, if you respond in the right way by this and how it's impacting people's lives. I just would have been thinking, man, woe is me. Like, why me? And so I'm thankful for him just changing and redirecting my thought process and my perspective. Yeah.
So was there a point during this journey or what was the point where you said, or someone said to you, hey, you've got a testimony?
Yeah, I never wanted to do it. I never thought about it that way because I always looked at life like if all of us are somewhere and something happened to me, I'd be like, man, all of us got opposition and adversity. I never would have looked at my situation like, oh, man, I'm like, man, they got problems too. Like, deal with it. It's nothing special. Handle it. And so we would go to Habitat for Humanity, and every time we would go, somebody would be like, hey, man, what happened to your arm? I'd be like, man, just an injury. And there would always be somebody just pressing the issue, and it would turn into an informal Q&A. And when I would get done, somebody would always be like, man, you might need to speak. I was like, nah, I'm cool. And we were a part of small groups, and small groups had always been something that I loved, right? And so I was a part of a small group, and it had guys in there that were like my senior by 10, 20, 30 years. And we would be in there, and there was a guy by the name of Gus. He was an older guy, and he would always challenge me, man. Whatever we would do, he just challenged me. And he started challenging me on sharing what happened to me and sharing my life. And I would always be like, nah, I'm cool, Gus. Right? And I would shut him down. And he was an old stubborn guy, right? Very successful entrepreneur, had a lot of restaurants. And one night he just challenged me. And I'll never forget what he said to me. He was like, man, you're selfish. And I was like, man, I'm probably the most unselfish dude you know. He's like, no, I'm not talking about like that. He said, you think what you went through is just about you and for you. I said, yeah, I went through it. He was like, no, man. He's like, what does the word say? He said, we're overcomers by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, right? He said, so you got a responsibility to share what happened to you. I was like, Gus, I hear you, man, but I ain't really on that.
I don't want to hear you.
Yeah, and it didn't feel good. But when I got back to my room that night, I thought about it. Not in terms of, man, I'm going to go and share, but I really hadn't shared. Like, I hadn't shared anything with anybody. I was just dealing with it. And I got an opportunity to speak in Mississippi. That was my first gig, man. Backwoods of Mississippi. Guy had strobe lights on the property, right? Kids came out. It's like a barn. And it felt right. And they gave me a coffee mug. I'll never forget it. And I got home, and my wife, she was like, what'd they give you? I was like, gave me this coffee mug. And at that point, I'm trying to find what God wanted me to do with my life. And she was like, you sure that's what God wants you to do? I was like, you need to get paid. Like, what's up with that? I was like, yeah, I think this is it. She's like, how? I was like, it felt right. I was like, I just felt it. Like, I got that feeling, and I was like, man, I'm all in. Because I had been searching, and that was the first gig, man, and it took off from there. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I haven't ever heard you speak in person, but me, like about 1 million other people, listen to you on social media or watch you on social media every day. And to our audience, if you're not following Inky Johnson on Twitter or on Instagram or one of the others, you're missing out from something inspiring just about every day.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and it means a lot.
You know, we talk about football a lot because, you know, football was obviously a huge part of your life and passion. And, you know, there's a lot of kids out there, coaches, and just curious, kind of just switching the subject a little about, you know, what if your son wanted to play football, are you okay with him playing football?
Yeah. I'll probably start him a little bit later, probably high school, to where I feel like he can properly process the information. The coaching will probably be a little bit more elevated. And, you know, then he can make, you know, his decisions based upon how he feels, his thoughts about the game. I can have more comprehensive conversation and dialogue with him about it. But if he gets to a point to where he wants to play and it's a little bit older, I'll probably let him play based upon presenting him with information, what's out there, how it affects and impact people. And if he takes that, digests that, and say, all right, Dad, I'm cool with it, I want to rock, I say, let's go for it. But it'll be when he's a little bit older, probably high school.
You know, we kind of started this podcast. I met these two old guys here. And, you know, we talked about, they've been through it. I'm kind of going through it with my kids now. But, you know, you talked about your two kids and being in youth sports. What have you seen from the youth sports that kind of trouble you, that you're kind of like, man, this has got to change?
Man, can I have a transparent moment?
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to tell you something that really bothers me, just as a man.
Yeah.
Not even as a father or former athlete. Something that really bothers me as a man is when you see 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old people and they talk about an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kid, right, through a sport. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, it's like the whole mission, the whole goal, the whole purpose is lost, right? Like, this should be the funnest time of a kid's life in terms of sport. Like, I'll never forget, man, I talked to a father one day, and, like, he was standing there talking to me, and he had tears in his eyes. And his kid was 10 years old. And he was like, last night, man, I talked to my kid when I got home from work, and my kid was in his room, broke down crying, and he told me he wanted to quit. And he was like, I didn't even know. It's like, I didn't even know he felt that way, right? And the father was crying. He was like, I didn't even know my son felt that way, right, about a sport. And he was like, I never thought, like, I would bring my kid to a sporting event at 10, and he would come home and be in his room like, I'll never want to do it again. Now, of course, we got to teach life skills.
Yeah.
But, like, that really bothers me that when people our age or older sit and look at a kid and they just talk down on them, right? Or even just, like, whether it's through coaching, right? Like, it's great to be demanding. I say it all the time. Like, you could be demanding, just don't be demeaning, right? Like, we act as if a 9, 10, 11-year-old sometimes, like, they supposed to know everything about whatever it is that they're doing, right? They're not going to be perfect. And so when we sit and we watch it, it's like, man, I'm so thankful and grateful now, because when you go through it, sometimes you don't realize it. But I'm thankful that I had, like, coaches, like, about the development of the young man, right? And it's not just about, oh, Ink can run this, he can do this, he can catch this. That's cool. But it was about the development. Like, my youth league coach showed up at my school and was like, Ink, your mom said you doing. I'm like, man, what you doing up here? Like, right? It was different.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't just, all right, you play ball, cool, going on about your business. It was like, no, man, my youth league coach was in the hospital the night I got injured. I started playing youth league when I was 7 years old. That's how strong the bond was. He still sends me drawers and socks every Christmas till this day, and I don't even need him. That's the bond that we had, just as a young man, and the way I viewed him. Just as a man, like, I revered him. Like, I was like, man, that's my guy. You see how he treats people? It wasn't just, man, he calls these plays, this, that, and the third. Like, me and Thomas Brown, who's the coach for the Rams, he was running backs coach, tight ends coach, went to Tucker. We was his 2 running backs. One day we're in the backfield. He's making us run a play over. I run the play. I come back. Thomas runs the play. He comes back. And we're like, man, you think coach know what he's doing? Hey, ran this play like 15 times already. He was like, oh, y'all think I don't know what I'm doing? I was like, nah, I wasn't saying that. He's like, go run it 20 more times, right? And he had the stopwatch. And he said, I guarantee you guys, if you hit the line of scrimmage at this time, it'll either be a touchdown, or it'll be a first down, or it'll be for positive yardage. And every time in the game, he would say, when I hold up the stopwatch, that's your signal that you hit it at the right time. When he will hold up the stopwatch, it will be 6, it will be a first down, or it will be positive yardage. Every single time. But we built our trust through the platform. It wasn't just coming out every single day and I'm going to just boom, 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 and see and test you and talk crazy to you. It was like, no, I'm going to build you as a young man through the sport.
So that's unbelievable. I mean, because I had a lot of great experiences myself, whether it was my parent, my dad coaching, or even other guys that impacted me. You know, I still talk. I went to Parkview. We had an unbelievable football program.
Parkview, man.
All the coaches that I had, I still talk to this
Ballers.
day. Guys,
Absolutely.
they all came to my wedding. They all. So let me ask you this, because I think it's changed. So where's been the breakdown? Where is that today? Is it a lack of coaches stepping up to be that?
Yeah. I think like you said, you had a lot of great coaches. I think it's a lot of great coaches out there, and I think the culture contaminates it, right? Whether it be sometimes us as parents contaminating the culture, and we try to do certain things through a coach to get our kid extra playing time or whatever the case may be, or we talk about certain kids around our kids, and then the kids come to practice, they repeat it, and then the bonds are broken. Because I think at heart, most kids want to be great teammates. Like, I think you put a kid on the field with another kid, they don't look at any of the other stuff. They look at it as, that's my buddy, we're going to play, we're going to compete, and they want to be great teammates. It's when they get in the car on the ride home and they're like, why is this guy starting? Why is he doing this? You're better than him. Kid process it, comes out to practice, they say it, the buns are broken, now you have no culture, right? And so I think it's a breakdown from that standpoint, but also I think every once in a while, man, we got to step back and we got to check our mission and our purpose and why we do what we do, right? If we say we're really about the work of young people and helping them develop, I think we have to challenge that, right, with each other. When we show up with young kids, like, think about it from the standpoint of somebody is really trusting you with their kid, right? Somebody is really saying, hey, man, I trust you to develop my son, my daughter through whatever the platform is. Right? First and foremost, looking at it big picture, like, God has blessed you with skills and abilities to go out and impact these young people. But most importantly, man, don't take advantage of it and don't extinguish the fire. We should be people that ignite the fire in young people, right? And I think a lot of times we're extinguishing the fire in young people, right? Kids are burning out a lot sooner. Kids don't want to play a lot sooner because of the different tactics the culture that's being created. Like, not saying that you come out and it's just, all right, everybody gets to do this. No, it's still competitive, and you still go out and you earn it. But the culture that's being built around kids, like if you go to a youth league game, as you all know, some of the things that get said, some of the things that happen, you're like, bro, are these 10-year-olds? Right? Are these 11-year-olds? Like, it's unbelievable.
And it's worse the younger fields you go to. If you go to the younger fields, the parents are crazier, it seems like.
It's
The
unbelievable.
parents get a little more kind of mature, I guess, as their kids get older, and they kind of are more realistic about the journey. But you go to a ballpark and you go to the T-ball and the first grade and second grade. That's when the parents are the craziest.
Yeah.
And you're getting them off on a bad start, on a bad foot. And I agree. That's incredibly profound. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, like a dad said to me one day, because me and my son, like, we're going to put in work. I tell him this and everything. Ink, we're going to work. Jay, we're going to work. I don't care if you want to, whatever it is, we're going to put in some work. We're going to work. That's a foundational principle. Don't care what you do, right? You could work McDonald's. You got to work, right? So dad says to me one day, oh, man, I know you probably want him to make it, right? I was like, what makes you think that? He's like, because you played, college ball, you had aspirations. I was like, no, that's cool. If he does, cool. If she makes it into something, cool. I said, but I know how quickly it can leave. Like, I know that. Like, I lost it overnight. And so my perspective about sports is totally different. A person might see me and my son is working, or me and my daughter's working, and think, oh, he played ball. I know he got to want. It's totally different. Like, I know what saved me, right? First and foremost, my faith, the Creator, but I know what saved me, what made me get out of the hospital, my community, what made me go into the training room, what made me still get my degrees, what made me still go to the sandpit. That wasn't talent. That was work ethic. That was dedication. That was commitment. That was a foundational principle. When I was a kid, get up, run 2 miles to the fire station, 2 miles back home, right? Nobody telling me to do that. Sometimes me and my dad would go do it together when we got older. Like, that was that. That was learning how to work for what I wanted, right? That spirit, that mentality, to where when you're long done with sports, that still resides. Like, I still got the same spirit today. I still work out. I still get up. I put in work. I could run with my son, run driveways, run hills. That spirit has been cultivated from the time I was young. It don't have nothing to do with a sport. My son said, Dad, I want a bottle flip. All right, how many bottle flips we going to do today? Right? Like, what we doing? Because in whatever you do, it's not about the outcome. I can care less if you go and you make it to Tennessee or Georgia. I care less. But in whatever you do, you have to work. And whatever you do, it's going to be sacrifice. And whatever you do, you have to be committed. And whatever you do, you have to compete, right? And whatever you do. And so I'm a firm believer in that. But I could care less about all the outcomes and all of that stuff. No, it's foundational principles. You build that through whatever you do, and you honor that.
So, Inky, speaking of foundational principles, you talk a lot about character. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how do you define character, to young kids? How do they, what does it mean in a sports environment? What translates beyond sports, and how do kids build character?
Absolutely. I believe character is when what you do, what you say, and how you live your life becomes one. And so I often would say to guys I play ball with, I would be like, man, I don't care how tall your daddy is. You got to do your own growing. Right? And just saying, like, bro, every day we got to cultivate and we got to build it. Like, character is not something we inherit, regardless of who our parents were, regardless of where we were raised, regardless of how we came up. Nobody can inherit character. They can't come to you when you're born and say, you got character. You got to build that, regardless if you grew up in 2-bedroom house, 14 people, 14-bedroom house, whatever it is. You still have to cultivate and build character. And I think you start small. Hey, man, I'm going to do this. Do it. Hey, I'll be there. Do it, right? You tell your guys, I'm going to give you everything I got. Give it, right? You show up to class, give it. And so guys always think it has to be something grand. And I told a story about a speech I gave a team. It was a Gatorade bottle. I was in a facility. I'm greeting guys, and it's a Gatorade bottle, like just sitting. right on the floor. And guys just step over it. What up, Ink? I'm like, what up? Guys step over. What up, Ink? After like 15 guys, I'm like, oh, nobody's going to pick it up, right? They just stepping over and dap me up, going to the team room. And as they're talking, yeah, we're going to win the championship this year. They're standing there. I'm like, cool. And all of them go in the room and they sit down. And I'm like, the Gatorade bottle's still there. And I grab it and I go into the room and I was like, I said, y'all going to be great. Y'all going to win the conference championship. Yeah. I said, how you going to be great, man? You can't even pick up a Gatorade bottle in your facility, right? Like, greatness is in the details. That's your character, right? Like, when I help coach, and I'm thankful that the guys allowed me to do it, when I was 9, like, they asked me, and then I helped coach my son's team. But after every game, like, me and the coaches was like, hey, bro, clean up the dugout. Like, clean it up. And at first, there was resistance, right? Because the young guys are like, man, that's not my bottle, right? Like, that's not my wrapper. We didn't leave that here. I'm like, all good. I get it, bro. No pressure. I get it. But let's clean up the dugout. Everywhere we go, let's clean up the dugout. Now, do you have to do it? No. Did you do it? No, man. You got every right. But that's character, right? We want to be known for something, how we compete, how we do things, right? You come, you beat a team, great. Clean up the dugout, go on about your business. Leave it better than you found it. You come, you get smashed, cool. Clean up the dugout, leave it better than you found it. Because we're trying to build consistency and character, not our character being based upon outcome, situation, circumstances if we get what we want. No, I want consistency in character. Goes great, great, same character. Not so great, great. Less than my best, great. Build consistency in character. And it starts with things that's unconventional. Like, I went to Dabo. Dabo's my guy. I went to one of his meetings, right? Yeah, Dabo's my guy, man. I went to one of his meetings, and he was just talking life. And I was sitting in the room, and he's just talking life, right? Going and going, just talking life. And I'm waiting on the ball, right? I'm like, he's going to start talking football, right? Because Clemson, they have success, man. They've done well over the past 10 years. Like, it's been incredible. And he was just talking life, and then they got to a little bit of ball. And so I asked the guy beside me, I was like, hey, bro, is it always like this? Like, is it always like life and then a little bit of ball? And the guy was like, yeah. He was like, he believes if you build a young man, the ball will take care of itself. It's like, so he's focusing on building young men, and football will take care of itself. Now, that's not saying that he doesn't work on it. He works on it a lot. But when he gets before those guys, just let them know, like, no, man, I care about you first as a young man. Because if I got a better you, I'll have a better football player. And I think oftentimes when we look at young athletes, it's how can I build the best shortstop? How can I build the best center fielder? How can I build the best four-hole hitter? And it's not, I want to build the best young man, right? And if I could build the best young man, the ball, you got that.
I got a good one for you because I know I actually want to hear what you have to say to this, but I know other parents hopefully will enjoy. And times have changed so much, obviously now with social media and all the things kids deal with now that we didn't deal with when we were kids. Let's be honest. You come home, you were outside for 6 hours playing, doing whatever. So how do these parents navigate making sure that they're, building, kids that can make a difference? How do you do that in a day and age of me first?
Oh, man. Like, you hit it on the head. It's tough, too, because social media and just environments and culture is just so important because it drives everything. And so I think we have to be extremely intentional, not just by what we try to pour into kids, but also making sure they have proper resources. That's why things like this is so important. Per athlete, things that we can drive them to say, hey, man, check out this, right? Constantly trying to override the other things in society that tell them otherwise. Hey, man, check out this guy. Hey, I met with a guy yesterday that's doing golf, right? And I was like, man, that's so cool. Like, I never knew about golf growing up. But I asked him more so about his story. I said, so when I meet a young kid and they play golf, I could be like, hey, man, check this guy out. And so constantly being intentional about the resources that we point them to and also overriding the thought process to try to counter some of these things because you can't take them away from it, right? because the world and the access to information is there. Like I remember my kids was in an environment once and they was like, we're banning YouTube, the internet, phones and everything. And I looked at the lady, I was like, what do you think that's gonna do? She's like, yeah, they're banning it. I was like, no, that's gonna make them want it more. Like they're gonna find different, like kids are creative. They're gonna find different ways to do it. I said, so we gotta find different strategies and let them know why it's important to watch certain things or to have access to certain things. And so I think, man, having people to point them to, but also information and access to certain things is extremely important, because young people, man, they have access to so much. And like you said, we didn't have some of the pressures that they have today. Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
You ain't lying.
I mean, that inspires me because, it is what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
We all see and our kids see on, on ESPN highlights on social media and on SportsCenter and on everything else. We see all these bad examples of individualism in sports all the time. But the truth is there are a lot of guys out there that are men and women of character.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to do by having guests like yourself and others is tell those stories and let people see, great examples that are out there.
Absolutely.
So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Curious is, you talked about your coach when you were younger, telling you he loved you. That hit me right away off the beginning. But talk about a few, because everybody's had a couple coaches that they don't necessarily love or agree with. And, I'd love to know, you don't have to name names, but I've done this. I didn't name names, but, what were a couple things that they did that you didn't love or that you're like, man, I don't like that. I don't want that for my kids someday.
Absolutely. Man, I had a coach, I had a basketball coach once. And so this is twofold, and I got to share this. So I had a basketball coach once, and he was just, man, it was like this guy woke up angry. Like he's just one of those guys. It was like, this guy's never in a good mood. And I was a young guy on the team, so I was playing up with older guys. And, I could play a little bit, and so they pulled me up on the team, and the guys were 2-3 years older than me. And so when they first pulled me up, I wasn't playing as much. When I would get in the game, I would make a difference. I would play, and guys started saying, man, you need to put Inky in more, man. He's doing his thing. But this guy's just grumpy, right? And so my mother was getting tired of it. Like, she was just like, this guy, all he does is whines. Like, he just whines all the time. He's always negative, right? And so I get in the game once, and it was a big moment, and I think I missed like a layup on a break, and I miss it, and he loses it, right? And I had been doing really well. He loses it, and he pulls me out of the game, right? And I look at my mom. I'm like, oh, my mom's about to be hot. And so I look at her, and I could tell she biting her tongue. After the game, we're going downstairs. We have our team meeting. My mom comes up to me. She's like, Ink, come here. She's like, you take that uniform off and you go in there and you give it to him. Like, we're not taking his negativity no more. So I was like, Mom, it's all good. I was like, it's all good. She was like, no, it's not. You go give it to him.
Mama bear
right?
poking
like,
out.
oh, and the mom is mad. It's like,
don't cross them.
I was like, nah, Mom, it's all good. I was like, I'm learning. I need those guys, right? Because I had a lot of great coaches, right? You have a prick here and there. But this was the first full-blown, like, I was like, oh, this guy's like always like just negative, right? And I needed it because along the way, even with my kids, it's been people along the way to where I've been like, I don't know. And I'm like, he might can take this experience, right? I'm gonna let him use this experience because I feel like somewhere down the line, because when I first got to Tennessee, an assistant coach said to me once, hey, Ink, you bust another play, we gonna send your little butt back to Clark, Atlanta, right? I started laughing. He was serious as a heart attack. He was hot, right? I was laughing, right? But I took it as a challenge because I just so happened to have that coach when I was younger that was similar, that I needed. And so sometimes I look at a situation with my kid, and I'm like, all right, I might not agree with this, might not agree with that, but my kid needs this. Not that he needs it, but he needs it because somewhere down the line, going to encounter a coach similar to that to where it's going to be like, all right, cool. I bumped into this guy before.
Yeah, he's
I know how to
prepared.
navigate it. And he could tell his teammates, like, bro, it's all good. We're playing for each other. Right? And so, but yeah, that was tough, man. But I needed it. He was a prick.
Send your butt back to Clark.
They told me. I was busting plays left and right. They're going to send your little butt back to Clark, man. I needed it.
I bet they weren't going to send you back.
Nah.
They knew what they had. He may have threatened, but he wasn't going to send you anywhere.
No, man. Yeah. And, like, I'll tell you this, too, man. I got to share this. Because I had a pivotal moment with my son once to where I was watching a game. He was playing. And this is when they first got into sports. And, like, I'm high strung. This is when I'm competitive.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, no, this is when I came into it with no perspective. I came into it like, ball, we got to compete. We got to win. Like, we got to go. Inc. Like, we here to dominate. Let's go. And so I'm watching it. I'm like, man, we just talked about that. Like, come on, bro. I'm watching it. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I was that guy, right? And it got to the second half, and I was so competitive about this youth event to where I was like, man, I can't watch this. Like, I got to go. Like, no control, right? So it got to the second half. The game was dwindling down, about to end. And I'm like, man, I got to go. I got to go outside. So I go outside, and I'm out there, and I'm pacing. I'm like, man, come on, man. We should have did this, did that. And I get to the car. We talk. Me and my wife get home that night. We're sitting there, and we're talking. I could sense some tension. And she said, the day when you left that game at the end, she's like, I didn't like that. And my wife teared up. And she was like, Ink, that wasn't right. And I was like, I apologize. I'm sorry. And it makes me emotional thinking about it. She was like, your son needed to look over there and see you. And I was like, man, like, I didn't even think about it that way. Yeah. I was so caught up, I didn't even see it that way. And so I've been on the other side, right, to where it's like super competitive. And so I get it and I identify with it. But I'm thankful that I had that experience to where it washed my eyes. It washed my perspective. To where now when I look at him, I'm like, that's my man. I got to teach him, right? I got to mold him. Even other people's kids. And so I've been on the other side of the fence to where it was like, Jack, competitive, to where when I had that experience and that talk with my wife, like that hurt me as a man, and I needed it, and it helped me, right?
Yeah, well, you said something early on that made sense. You're like, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. These should be the funnest years of these kids' lives playing sports.
Absolutely.
Because you played at the highest level, I happen to do it, and it's like it's going to become a job at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does, whether you like it or not. Yeah, you can have fun doing it, but I think it's so true. We're robbing some of the joy from these kids by, but like you said, you want to teach, and you should. You should, demand for them to listen, to pay attention, to
Absolutely.
do this. But we're also at the same time, robbing these kids a chance of having fun.
Absolutely.
Well, and honestly, as parents, we're robbing ourselves of a lot of fun too.
Absolutely.
If we take it so serious
You're right.
Absolutely.
with our kids, because it is a blast to watch your kids play ball. And if you get, and I mean, I've been there and I've done it the wrong way some, and I've hopefully done it the right way some. But if you get so caught up in where they're going to end up, then you lose the fun of it for yourself and for your family as well.
I think I appreciate you sharing that and your transparency, because I guarantee you, especially every dad listening has had that moment. I mean, there's not one dad listening, or mom probably too, that have not said, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? And you hope, and this is what's so great about you being here, is that, they hear this, if they haven't done it or they don't realize they've done it, hearing someone like you be as transparent as you are about your perspective now is so healthy, obviously, and it's so great. But to you to say, oh no, I've been there. I've been that dad who walked out and they hear that, and hopefully it'll help make them. I'm sure it will make an impact on their life. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So wrapping up here, final question for me when I think about it, all you've been through, obviously before the incident at Tennessee, after, you've learned a whole bunch of stuff. Like I said, I've enjoyed listening to a lot of your different speeches. You know, I don't love when you go to some of the rival schools, but you know what? We'll let that slide.
Like
but,
the Clemson story.
yeah, I mean, I love when you're hanging with Dabo. Dabo's my boy. So I love that. But no, and he is a great, you know, he speaks his mind. He's a man of faith, and that's who he is. But, you know, what's one or two things, and really maybe a couple if you don't mind sharing, that you've learned along the way that now as you watch your kids, they're 11, 12, they're going to keep growing, that you want to instill in them, that when they go to college and they go on and they're going through this, that you want them to take with them that you know will be successful?
Man, always be a good teammate, right? And I use the word teammate, you know, as it pertains to sport, but like teammate in different environments, whether it be in our careers, with our family members, always be a good teammate, man, because different people are going through different things. And don't just be the guy that when everything is going well, you're good, and one of your guys is struggling, you kind of click up and you leave your guy out to dry. Like, always be a good teammate, right? Like, when one of your guys is struggling, like Ink has a guy on his team, a kid, to where Ink started struggling one year in baseball. He had a little rough patch. He was struggling. And him and his kid would always do really well. Like, both of them would always be hot, on fire. So Ink starts struggling, and they moved him down in the lineup. And so his guy comes over there, a little silly dude, and he's like, "Hey, bro, they should have moved me. Like, like, it's all good, Ink." And I saw Ink start laughing, right? And after the game, you know, he gets hot again. He starts rolling. And I was like, Ink, that's a good teammate. Like, that's a good teammate. He could have just stayed over there doing his thing. He came, he joked, he supported you, and he was all good. But another thing that I try to teach my son and my daughter is always be willing to support and then challenge. Because oftentimes, whether it's leadership or whether it's just us as people, we want to challenge people a lot, right? Like, in the arena of sports and in life, when we're trying to get the best out of our teammates, our family members, we always want to challenge. So always be willing to support and then challenge. Because when you support, it gives the legs and the foundation to being able to challenge. And so now a person is not resisting the challenge because they're like, well, bro, you never supported me, right? When I was struggling, when I was down, you never came and shared empathy and said, hey, man, I'm here with you. I got you. You just came and you challenged me. And so always be willing to support and challenge and be a good teammate, you know, always be a good teammate. I think it's important.
Well, I tell you what, man, we can't thank you enough for joining us today, man. I know, again, there's another one. I've gotten so much out of this. I know these parents will, but I love your heart. I love, obviously, you've taken a story that, you know, you could have let it be tragedy. Instead, you've turned it around to maybe someday you can look at, I'm sure you do, as one of the greatest blessings,
no doubt,
in your life.
Absolutely.
And I wish more people could have that attitude to take adversity and just say, you know what, I'm going to turn it into something positive. And I can't thank you for your story, the man you are, what you do in the community, and blessing us for coming on our podcast today, man.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Hey, and I want to add one thing to that. And I'm going to say to our audience, Inky did not ask us to do this whatsoever. But if you've been impacted by his story, he speaks in front of corporate environments all the time. And as you can tell, he's dynamic and has a great message. I think your website is inkyjohnson.com.
Yes, sir.
So if you're interested in having him at one of your events, go to his website and check it out. I don't think you'll be sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
No,
Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the platform. Appreciate you guys doing this, man. Because me and my boys, we have conversations often about places to point our kids to, and just dialogue, to be able to have healthy dialogue. So I appreciate you guys. That's why when we were talking, I was like, man, I love it. I watch it. So it's awesome, man.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Means a lot.
Hey guys, Jeff Francoeur here. Thanks for checking out Pure Athlete, and subscribe to our channel on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you go to listen to our podcast.